You don't really need a bunker in a disaster.
Jen Heller joins us to discuss the disaster playbook. Plus, we got a lot of news, if I can learn how to talk today, on the Undercurrent.
How you doing, Uncle Warren?
I am 5 by 5, as they say. You know where that comes from?
No, I don't. Please.
I don't know.
Do
No, I was asking you if you know. I think it's a military thing. Like everything's 5 by
Okay.
5. That
All
means
right.
everything's square. Everything's good.
How's the weather up there right now?
It is sunny, 83 degrees right now. Not quite as humid as it
Okay.
was, but I believe next week we're getting that heat dome back again,
You mentioned
and
that.
that's going to jack up those temps once again because we're still. I mean, usually it just starts as soon as it seems like July 1st. Boom! It's like somebody flips a switch, and then it's like super hot.
Mm-hmm.
Super crazy hot.
Yeah.
So what about down there? You getting it? Is it balmy?
It is already 88 degrees, feels like 94. It's just the humidity down here in particular, it's just untenable. I go out at night to do my walks because it's really difficult to do it during the
Yeah.
daytime. So I'll go out like at 9 o'clock at night, go in and take that long walk. But man, I'll tell you, I'll be looking forward to fall.
Yeah. Yeah. Willie says the same thing. What's up, Willie?
Yeah.
He said it's 90 over there in North Carolina. 90
Oh
outside in
man.
Raleigh. What's up?
Yeah.
We got John here too. He's around here. Yeah, it's still
Okay.
hot today. A little breeze.
CBC voter, you have a question. Yes, I am right now in Bentonville, Arkansas. I am from Chicago, and I'm returning to Chicago relatively soon. But I've had a short sojourn down here in Arkansas, and yeah, so it is hot. It is really hot down here.
Yeah, it's I had my walk yesterday I started out about 11 o'clock and it wasn't bad yesterday. It was a little humid. So I usually walk for a little over an hour. And by the time I got back, built up a nice sweat, the body core temp kind of came up a little bit, trying to burn
Yeah.
off a little bit of these sandwiches I got down here. But yeah, Poppy's here too. Good to see you. She says she does her gardening at 6 a.m.
Don't blame her.
Yeah. I mean, you tell Bud and Reeve Philly.
Mhm.
That's our local dispensary around, or one of them around here. Yeah, they should have a July. Oh my God, it's too hot to go outside. Let's stay inside and enjoy cannabis deal. But I'll next time I'm in there, John, I'll see if they'll work that out for it. They seem to have all kinds of crazy stuff in there. So, but yeah, it's when Poppy's talking about that, it reminds me when I was a kid and that Dad had this huge vegetable garden every year. And we would get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning before the sun hit to get out there to do a lot of the stuff that we need. It was still warm though, because that's the thing about the South is like, yeah, it cools down, but it usually cools down from like 90 or 100 in the daytime to like around 80 and humid at night. So it's still like.
And again, it's just plain sticky. I mean, my usual loop on these nights is I leave my house, I walk to the big Walmart, and that's about a mile or so, and then I go in there, cool down, do my shopping, and then I walk back, and that actually makes things manageable. But it's just not the way I want to be going about things.
Got Chuck in the house here too. Lance Ripa's here. It's very good to see. Of course, he doesn't mention that Chicago exports its humidity to Toronto. Hey, we're just passing the savings along from the South, buddy. All right, so it's like, nope, we don't want this. Here you go, Canada. And Canada's like, this is too hot, eh? I need some poutine. I don't know where they came from. I was trying to think of something cold like snow or like something like a Canadian beverage or something, or like I
There's
need a
beer.
I need a Molson, need a
Yeah.
Molson, I need a Molson triple back, yeah. So anyway, we could talk about the weather all day long. I guess we should probably get to the actual news part of the program. This might be some good news for some people. The Medicaid funding is resuming for Planned Parenthood after being cut off for most of a year. So what's all this about? Planned Parenthood and two smaller regional abortion providers are resuming billing Medicaid for services other than abortion after being cut off for most of a year. The defunding, which was mandated in Trump's big tax and policy law last year, has been blamed in the closure of multiple clinics, as well as a reduction in the number of Planned Parenthood patients being screened for breast cancer or tested for sexually transmitted infections. The Medicaid bill was allowed to resume Sunday. The restored funding does not mean the battle over federal abortion policy has ended, and not all services that were cut will return. So here's what's up. Many abortion providers, including Planned Parenthood affiliates, have struggled financially since the 2022 Supreme Court decision that overturned Roe v. Wade and allowed state abortion bans to be enforced. Clinics have closed in states with abortion bans and restrictions, as well as those without. Planned Parenthood says its affiliates have closed nearly 30 of its roughly 600 clinics over the past year, citing the funding change as a key reason. Over that period, affiliates dispensed about 25% fewer packs of birth control pills and conducted about 20% fewer breast cancer exams than the previous year. Many patients, especially in places where healthcare can be hard to access, may not have had care at all because of the defunding, the organization says. Planned Parenthood Action Fund spokesperson Angela Vasquez-Giro said the cuts have also led to limited abortion access in some places. Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin halted abortions for about a month, then dropped its status as an essential community provider so it could resume seeking reimbursement. The Arizona affiliate paused offering many of its services to patients covered by Medicaid. The defunding provision also impacted two other healthcare providers that met the criteria in the law because they were nonprofit family planning organizations that provided abortion and received more than $800,000 yearly in Medicaid reimbursements. Their experiences were very different. Maine Family Planning closed 3 primary care clinics that served about 1,000 patients in the largely rural state. Evelyn Kiltica, a senior vice president of program services, said Monday that even with help, their former patients had to wait an average of 4 to 6 months to be established with new providers. Meanwhile, the number of abortions the group provided held steady, she said. Maine is one of several states where state-funded Medicaid covers abortion. Patients at health imperatives in Massachusetts may not have noticed the change as no services were dropped. The state government funded Medicaid reimbursements that the federal government stopped, something that Planned Parenthood said happened in some form in 14 states. On top of that, the clinic system received a grant from Melinda Gates Foundation. So Planned Parenthood's Arizona affiliate has already announced expanded hours and more telehealth options linked to the ability to bill Medicaid again. Some other services are not likely to be restored. Kiltica said Maine Family Planning isn't planning to bring back its primary care practices again. When you close something down and you lose positions, she said, it's very difficult to bring that back and build it back up again. And Michelle Quesada, Vice President of Communications, Brand, and Marketing for Planned Parenthood affiliate in Florida, said a closed clinic in Lakeland isn't expected to reopen, partly out of concern that Congress or the Trump administration could cut Medicaid reimbursements for the organizations again. There's no telling with this uncertainty, she said. It's like a yo-yo effect. So the political battle isn't over. Abortion opponents are pushing Congress to adopt another defunding policy. They've defunded big abortion before, Kelsey Pritchard, a spokesperson for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, said Monday, and they should do everything in their power to do it again. Planned Parenthood contends that most general election voters don't want the organization to be defunded. Pritchard said that the Republican base does. Yeah, that's the Republican base in a nutshell. We do things different and screw everybody else and what they want. But I guess this is some good news. But overall, the restriction of healthcare like that, based solely because they might provide abortions, is really unfortunate for a lot of these people who depend on these healthcare facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I volunteered at Planned Parenthood back when I was in college. That was in Central Illinois. This was in the very early 90s, where there was still a lot of violence against family planning providers. And it was an interesting time. I remember we had a protocol for bomb threats. And every phone, this was back when people had the phones with cords and that sort of thing, back in the ancient of days. But everyone had a card underneath it, and you know, if somebody was making a threat, you would pull the card out and hold it up, and it gave instructions for you, but it would let other people know to start calling the police, and to get the call traced and that sort of thing. So it was crazy times. That clinic did not provide abortions.
Right.
It provided basic healthcare services, sex education services. Parents could come in and check out age-appropriate kits of information to give their kids about sex education. We had a condom store. And it was, everything was sold at cost, but I used to work in the condom store, and that was a great deal of fun. But so that we provided all kinds of help and support and medical care to people in that area that was simply not available. And it was also on a pay what you could. They provided a lot of services at what the patient could pay. And so, but they would still get the protesters outside, even though there was no abortions taking place. That's the reality. And Planned Parenthood and these clinics do provide, and they fill in gaps. They absolutely fill in gaps for folks all over the country, even if those, even in areas where there are other physicians, but they may not be open to providing family planning services. People can go to Planned Parenthood and get non-judgmental care.
Yeah, and with the condom store too, when they deliver, that's when the rubber hits the road. So next up, we got Elon Musk's bid to set aside Twitter fraud verdict rejected by the U.S. judge. See how I did that? Kink a segue.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, somebody should have wore a condom a while back. Yeah. So this has already been a done deal. The verdict has already been put against him, but now he was trying to appeal the money he's going to have to spend, and it's a good chunk of change. Maybe not for a trillionaire, but it's pretty good chunk. So a federal judge on Monday rejected Elon Musk's bid to void a jury verdict, finding that the world's richest person defrauded Twitter investors by trying to drive down the social media company's stock price after agreeing to a $44 billion takeover. U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer in San Francisco also denied Musk's motion to decertify the class of investors and granted the investors' motion for prejudgment interest. The judge did find Musk not liable for one of his challenged tweets. Even if the speaker has a change of heart or a momentary regret about a transaction, such qualms do not justify lying to the investing public, Breyer wrote. Investors accused Musk of falsely suggesting that Twitter was overrun by fake and spam accounts known as bots to force the company to renegotiate his offer or let him back out. They said it caused losses when they sold shares at depressed prices, which is kind of funny. It's kind of ironic now because now Twitter really is overrun by fake and spam accounts. A lawyer for the investors estimated that Musk could owe $2.6 billion in damages following the March 20th verdict. Musk ultimately bought Twitter on October 2022, in October 2022, and changed its name to X, which a lot of people, the younger people use. The older people still call it Twitter. Willie knows what's up. It's now part of his rocket and satellite company SpaceX. Lawyers for Musk did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Mark Malumphy, a lawyer for the investors, called it a very good day for investors in public markets after jurors rejected Musk's effort to game that system. Musk often chooses to battle shareholders in court rather than settle. He also faces a lawsuit in Manhattan claiming he defrauded Twitter investors by waiting too long to disclose his initial investment, letting him buy cheaply. Jurors found Musk liable for May 13th and May 17th, 2022 tweets about Twitter, less than 1 month after he agreed to a takeover. Musk's first tweet said the purchase was temporarily on hold, pending details on whether bots represented less than 5% of users. Investors said it caused Twitter's share price to fall 18% over 2 trading days. The second tweet said the percentage of bots could be much higher than 20%, and the purchase cannot move forward until Twitter's chief executive proved it was under 5%. Breyer found substantial evidence of falsity in the May 13th tweet and said a jury could conclude that Musk had a motive to get out of the existing deal and used bots as a pretext to do so. The judge, however, said the lack of market reaction to the May 17th tweet meant Musk was not liable for it. So Breyer also rejected Musk's claim that jurors were mocking him and using the verdict to send a message by highlighting the figure $4.20 in bright blue on the verdict form. The number 420 is associated with marijuana culture. Really? I've never heard that before. 420. I wonder what that means.
You learn something new every day.
I know, right? And Musk has often used it in his interviews, tweets, and in business activities. Musk's takeover of Twitter valued the company at $54.20 per share. In another example, Musk's 2018 tweet that he had funding secured to take his electric car company Tesla private for $420 per share prompted a U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission civil fraud lawsuit, which he later settled. I thought he'd fight some in court. What's up with the settling? The judge, however, said it defies common sense that jurors were biased against Musk, noting that they deliberated over nearly 4 days and sided with Musk on some claims. Breyer also found no evidence that 420 was negatively associated with Musk. To the contrary, 420 is a reference to cannabis/marijuana. Breyer wrote, "One need only walk around San Francisco on April 20th to observe how prevalent the celebration can be. Or for others, 420 is you have 2 times a day to celebrate, in the morning and in the evening." So I'm told. I don't know about these doobies, but I do know that Musk is going to have to pay this money now, which is good.
All right. I think that Elon Musk is a public nuisance.
Definitely, especially when he was doing that Doge.
Lord!
Last year, no one wanted any of that stuff except for the Republican base, who seem to think that all of the problems in our country are from immigrants or people or welfare queens, and has nothing to do with the greedy corporations who actually buy and pay for politicians and that sort of thing. It has nothing to do with them
now
at
we
all.
have ranchers, who voted for Trump, who are complaining about the screwworms and what's happening to their cattle stock, and they're complaining about all this when that was in part due to Doge and those cuts, because those people knew nothing about the kind of research that was being done to prevent the screwworms.
Right, exactly. A lot of those
and we
things,
all got screwed in the process.
Yeah. Talking about the screwworms. Yeah, all of that, all these cuts that he proposed for Trump to make, he had no idea what he was doing. He had no idea what these programs actually did, and I don't think he even cared. I think he was just going through cut, austerity. Yeah, so he lost a lot of support after all that happened. Musk did
Yeah.
for sure. So yeah, what is it? It's just what he's got coming to him. You build it's karma. So yeah, I hope he has to pay out more in Manhattan. I hope he loses everything, actually, to be honest with you.
I hope he gets deported.
So, people have been talking about this Mitch McConnell situation, right? Is he brain dead? Is he a corpse? What's going on with him? Nobody's heard anything. He was in the hospital a week ago, and since then, it's been radio silence. Well, now the governor of Kentucky, he wants to know. Probably should tell him. Oh, I forgot to do this. Where's my thing? Oh, here we go. Thank you. Get out my graphics up there. Otherwise I get confused. So Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear requests update on Mitch McConnell's health, as do the rest of us. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear formally requested an update from Senator Mitch McConnell on Wednesday amid a weeks-long hospitalization that has prompted growing speculation about his health. Over the last several weeks, Kentuckians have grown increasingly concerned about the current state of your health and well-being and ability to hold office in the U.S. Senate, Beshear wrote in a letter to McConnell on Wednesday. That would be today. As governor, I request that you fully update Kentuckians regarding the current status of your health. McConnell, who's 84, has been hospitalized since June 14th. Emergency medical personnel responded to an unconscious person at McConnell's home on the same day, according to a public EMS dispatch call reviewed by CBS News last week. Since then, McConnell's office has not provided more information about why he was admitted to the hospital and has not confirmed that the dispatch call was about the senator. McConnell's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment Wednesday. Beshear, a Democrat, said public office holders have made a commitment to our constituents to do our best to represent them and to always, you can stop there, and to always be transparent. I believe this requires a clear communication about one's ability to serve, he wrote. We wish you a safe and speedy recovery. In a statement, Beshear said allowing the speculation over McConnell's health to continue is not fair to the senator or to Kentuckians, and my hope is that this provides him the opportunity to share the information in a transparent manner direct from the source or from the great beyond. Amid the speculation about McConnell's health, Senate GOP leaders said that they spoke to the Kentucky Republican earlier this week. Wink, wink, wink. Well, they spoke to him, but did he speak back? A spokeswoman for the number 2 Senate Republican, Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming, said McConnell was fully engaged and is eager to get back to the Senate. Beshear's request comes as questions have swirled about McConnell's ability to continue to serve. McConnell is not seeking re-election, but has vowed to serve the remainder of his term, which runs through early next year. In the event of a vacancy, recent changes to Kentucky law have limited the governor's involvement in appointing a replacement, requiring instead that a special election be held. Beshear vetoed the legislation changing the rules in 2024, arguing that his administration deserves the same authority as previous administration, but the GOP-led state legislature overrode his veto, which is kind of funny because House Representative from Kentucky, Thomas Massey, just lost his election or lost the primary. And now, if there is a special election, he could run for that Senate seat.
He could.
Which I find that to be quite humorous. I'm not a super fan of Thomas Massey or any of these elected people because they've lied to us so many times, but I find that to be an intriguing concept, whereas they were trying to get rid of Massey out of the House, and now is a good possibility he could get that Senate seat if McConnell is actually at the point where he cannot serve his duties as a senator anymore.
Yeah, and I'm a little surprised. I mean, one way to potentially resolve this, or at least quell some public speculation, would be to allow Andy Beshear to visit McConnell.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
that would be something that could be done. Look, I mean, look, I don't wish, I genuinely don't wish ill on anybody. Um, really, I sincerely don't. And I understand the need to preserve some privacy and that sort of thing. But when you are in the public eye like this, you owe the public an explanation. And this has just led to ridiculous speculation, and it's moving into the realm of bizarre, in my personal opinion, because been so many strange things about this. And if they would allow the governor to go in and talk to him, this could be addressed effectively.
Yeah, and he may very well do that. He may
Yeah.
go himself, to see for himself, because yeah, it's one thing if Republicans say, "Oh yeah, I talked to him, he's fine." It's like, well, what about his people?
Mm.
Why aren't his people saying, what's going on with him? That's the whole. Because you remember, like back when the USSR was a thing, the old Soviet leaders, they would be ill, but they wouldn't tell the public that they were
Yeah.
ill or anything like that. And then the next thing you know, you got a new Soviet leader, and you're like, well, what happened to the other dude? They're like, you do not need to know, comrade.
Yeah.
That is not your business. So some hinky things, as our buddy Ed likes to say, have been happening, and including that with Mitch McConnell's wife, Elizabeth Chow, as
Elaine Chow.
I'm sorry, Elaine Chow.
She and I share the same name.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Elaine.
Did they call her Laney too?
I don't think so.
Okay. So Laney Chow speaks on China visit amid U.S. Senator's hospitalization. Yeah, so it was like 3 days after she left. Okay, you guys can go out of the way. And all of a sudden, 3 days after he was hospitalized, all of a sudden she's off to China. So Elaine Chow, wife of Mitch McConnell, is speaking out about her trip to China 3 days after the Kentucky senator was hospitalized. In a statement to WHAS 11, that's this outfit here, as you can see with the big ass thing there. A spokesperson for the former U.S. Transportation Secretary said McConnell's condition did not warrant an immediate return to the U.S. Probably because he might be dead. The secretary was on a long planned trip in China to support her family's philanthropic endeavors, Chow's spokesperson said. During the trip, she met with a number of people, including the U.S. ambassador. According to a news release from China's U.S. Embassy, Chow also met with Chinese Vice President Hang Zheng on June 17th to discuss further efforts to strengthen China-U.S. relations. McConnell was hospitalized on June 14th, and 24 days later, his office has released few details about his condition, as we just told you. The same morning McConnell was hospitalized, new 9/11 audio or 911 audio revealed first responders went to his home in Washington, D.C., where a person was found unconscious. Told you about that. McConnell, who survived polio in his childhood, has experienced numerous public health incidents over the last few years, including multiple falls and freezes. In February, he was hospitalized for 8 days due to flu-like symptoms. McConnell is Kentucky's longest-serving U.S. senator. In 2025, McConnell announced he would leave Congress. So she was doing business overseas for the U.S., basically, is what she's saying. But yeah, it is kind of funny that her husband's hospitalized, and then 3 days later, yeah, I gotta go. Especially if, but it all goes back to what the hell's wrong with him, right? If he's in the hospital, the people who voted for him, especially, besides his family or whatever, they want to know what's wrong with him. And if she's like, oh, well, it's fine, I can just leave my husband in the hospital, that, without really going into what actually happened to him, that could go several ways,
It can go several ways. The thing is when people are at that age, they become increasingly fragile. And they've been married since 1993. This is a long marriage. I don't even want to think about the nature of the marriage. That's none of my business. And I just don't want my mind going in that direction. But one would think that she would want to be at home with the man that she's been married to for over 30 years, who is fragile. If you're that age, you're fragile. You can be in general good health, but if something happens, it's going to be harder and harder for all the king's men to put you back together again.
Yeah,
And
especially when you've been hospitalized multiple times too in recent
he's
years.
post polio. I mean, he's lived a good long life for somebody who, post polio, but I mean, there's a lot of factors here. And this has led to a lot of speculation. I've been reading stuff from people on the right who are saying that Elaine Chao is actually a Chinese agent, and a Chinese asset, and she's just going, this is all going to plan. I don't believe that, but at the same time, this is the kind of speculation that happens when information is not forthcoming and there hasn't been an attempt to let somebody like the governor of Kentucky to come in and see what's going on. And when his own wife is out of the country, very far out of the country, and I don't see any reason to come back for this. It's really hinky.
Yeah. Maybe the marriage isn't as good as it used to be. Like you said, don't want to speculate, but I mean, let's just look at the things here. So he's an 84-year-old man who's had severe health problems in recent years, hospitalized once again, and then 3 days later, she says, "Okay, it's all right for me to go on this trip." Instead of just postponing the trip or maybe rescheduling the meeting. I mean, yeah, it could be legitimate that she went to China for business, like for whatever business she was doing. But at the same time, the timing.
Now, this morning I was reading some contradictory, the information that's been coming out on the timing of the trip, and reading this article, I'm still not clear on what happened. Some people are saying that she left for the trip after this happened. Others were saying that she was already there. Now, they've admitted it was a long planned trip. But I need to get more clarity on this because I have multiple sources. And then again, this is the kind of confusion that happens, and they're allowing this confusion to happen. This could be cleared up very easily. And they're not doing it. They're not providing it.
Yeah. So Baghdad Bob of Kentucky here, Scott Jennings, he says, "I spoke to my old friend Mitch McConnell this morning, the senior senator from Kentucky." I don't know if he has that southern drawl, but I'm going to use it. He's still recovering in the hospital. We talked for just shy of 20 minutes about Iran, Ukraine, the unfolding situation in Maine, and my visit to the TR Presidential Library. I'm assuming that's Teddy Roosevelt. And even a little bit of Senate history. I told him we want him back at work as soon as possible. Howdy. And then this asshole, Uncle Warren, posted it. That's grade A, 100% bull cookies. Postuopolis says, "I also spoke to Mitch McConnell for 20 minutes. He spoke to me for 0 minutes because he couldn't speak." Lucifer chimed in. Scott's conversation with Mitch there with the Ouija board. Mike 1010-011 says, "I'll take shit that never happened for $500, Alex." And this Dr. Kai R. Sakri it said, "Y'all really need to coordinate your stories with much more believability." And what this says is, this is from Kylie Jane Kremer. What a coincidence. Leader John Thune, Senator John Barrasso, and Scott Jennings, Kentucky, all just happened to have separate 20-minute conversations with Senator McConnell, discussing many of the same topics, and somehow all ended up with the exact same talking points. Yet not one person asked about McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao, jetting off to China to meet with the CCP 3 days after he was hospitalized. This reads like organic updates, less like organic updates and more like coordinated PR rollout. And then Jen Kuger said something, whatever. That's fine. Yeah. So, it's the talking. Oh yeah. I spoke to him for 20 minutes. And our buddy Ed made a good point. It's like, even if, and I believe you said this too, when this age of AI, you can capture somebody's voice and recreate it fairly convincingly. Tech people will probably catch it, but regular people be like, "Well, say he's still alive. Yeah. Come on, y'all, he's still alive." Exactly.
By the way, Bella is talking about turtle sex. Have you ever seen turtle sex? You can find it on YouTube. It's hilariously funny. because you watch the male turtle, and the lady turtle just is kind of sitting there, but the male turtle, he like climbs on, and then he goes like, and it's really funny.
Full disclosure, my old man never told me the birds and bees, so I had to learn it from turtles. That's why a lot of my partners are often wondering, what's with the squeaking? Why do you keep with that? I said, I thought that's what you did. Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that story and see what happens with old Mitch McConnell, the sex machine. Talking about those dirty turtles. Them old dirty turtles. Y'all know what's up. So now, by popular demand, it's time for the catch of the day. You want to intro this?
Absolutely.
We pre-recorded this yesterday, so
we did. Jennifer Heller is the owner of Here Comes the Apocalypse, and is the author of the Disaster Playbook. And she and her team do incredible disaster preparation materials and education, huge amount of free content online. She's fantastic. And she couldn't be on our live show today, but we wanted to get her on the show. So we pre-recorded this. I think you're going to really like this interview. It was a lot of fun to do. I think we all really enjoyed it. A lot of good information, but it also, she takes a position on disaster prep that's not the bunker mentality, not a bunch of right-wing people loading up with guns, but actual ways for communities, individuals, families, communities to work together to ensure that their communities are resilient, particularly in an age of climate change. So we're going to be doing this video for the catch of the day today. Thank you. So Jennifer, could you tell us, what is disaster preparedness?
I created the disaster playbook. I have grown up around disasters, right? Like, I live in California. Earthquakes are a major thing here, and then now wildfires very often. And, growing up, we always had an earthquake kit and everything. And then I had a kid, and we started seeing these wildfires take out whole neighborhoods in Northern California. And I was like, okay, well, what does a disaster plan look like? And I got some really crazy answers when I started doing the research. One guy said that you should carry a bunch of stuff with you all the time in case you get trapped in a elevator, so that you can pry your way out. And I'm not going to carry a crowbar. I have kids, and he wasn't really suggesting a crowbar, but some very things that would get flagged at security at any, government building. And so I was just like, well, what does reasonable preparedness look like for people who aren't, a lot of people who live in rural areas are really great at getting their homes ready for disaster, for hurricanes and stuff like that. But if you live in a suburban neighborhood, what is reasonable preparedness where you're not looking to go off the grid? And I found that question was really hard to answer, just getting straightforward, not crazy advice. And so I actually mapped out what I thought disaster preparedness really looked like. And it's not just gear. People are always talking about food and water, which is great, but there are so many scenarios where you're not at home, right? And with my family, we're often in 4 different locations, right? There's 4 of us, and we're in 4 different locations. What if we can't go home? Where are we going to meet? How are we going to communicate if the cell phone towers are down? And these were not easy answers to get from the internet. I remember looking at the website for FEMA, that was like, create your disaster plan. And literally it was like, use our form. And I'm like, oh, great. And when I went to the form, it was a form field that said, enter your disaster plan. And they didn't tell you any examples or give you any guidance as to what you put in there. And I'm like, well, people need guidance. They need a formula.
Right.
And so, one of the steps that I have people do is to actually get paper maps, because you really often, we live our lives on their phones,
Mhm.
and some of us can't even read a map, so that would be a step. If you don't know how to read a map, maybe like spend some time, look at a map. Even those of us who are used to using GPS, review it, right? We don't use maps very often, and actually highlight the routes to your common locations and highlight some alternative routes, especially if there's bridges or other things that could get taken out by a disaster, so that you have a paper map to follow. So that's just one example. But to answer your question about what preparedness is, I think it's any combination of planning with your loved ones and gear that makes you feel safer, right? It's all about your peace of mind as we go through this life.
All right. Something that I hear a lot about in your social media, and you, by the way, have some fantastic social media, and that where we have links to all of that in our show notes for folks to check out.
Thank you.
But you use a term a lot that I'd like you to explain to the audience, and that is normalcy bias.
Yes. So normalcy bias is our expectation that things are going to continue to be exactly as they are, right? And it's,
Mhm.
we all expect that the sun's going to rise again tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
That's normalcy bias. Obviously, we have good reason to expect that the sun will continue to rise. But normalcy bias actually causes us to discount the threats that are real and somewhat impending, right? And
Mhm.
as extreme weather has increased
Mhm.
so much over the years, I've got this graph on our website on the Why Prepare page, and it's like, whoo, it is a terrifying graph. How many billion-dollar extreme weather events have been happening in recent years? And it's not just a normal amount, right? A normal amount, it would be
Right.
like that. And instead, it's like this. And that means that more and more people are going to be affected by extreme weather events as time goes on. And that's heartbreaking to me. And I wish it wasn't so. But that's the reality that we're in. And so it is really important that we tell our brains, I know you think that everything's going to continue to be the same, but just in case, we're going to take some steps to prepare.
Right. I'm thinking about that meme of the little animal that's in the burning place and says, "This is fine. This is
Yeah.
fine." And then finally, his face is on fire and he's melting. And I think it's right, that we oftentimes want to overlook anomalies because we don't perhaps want to admit what's coming or what's actually happening. It's just too much for us to take.
Oh, yes, I would much rather bury my head in the sand, Absolutely.
What's the you were talking about using paper maps, which I think is a great idea, because once if the power is out, or if the cell towers go out, that's really the digital stuff's not going to really do you any good. Do you think it's important for, like, say there's a disaster at your own home, like a fire or something like that, to have maybe like a bug out bag kind of ready to go, or maybe even in your car, or I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that everybody should definitely have a go bag of some sort,
Mhm.
and I think that that's a very common advice, and what we suggest in the disaster playbook that you keep gear in 4 locations. So at home, your go bag and your emergency kit, right? So at work, if you don't work from home
Mhm.
and if your employer isn't providing emergency supplies,
Mhm.
having some emergency supplies at work, because we all spend a lot of time at work, in our car, and
Mhm.
then under our bed also, big, especially in earthquake territory, so that you can, if this actually happened to my husband's grandmother, was in the earthquake of 1906 in San Francisco, and she woke up and her bed was on the other side of the room. So the bed just flew across the room. And so if you are in earthquake territory, or, you know, I guess this would be relevant in a house fire as well, having some gloves, work gloves, some goggles, a flashlight, and a whistle minimum in a kind of tote bag type thing that you actually tie to your bed leg, so that if your bed traveled, your gear would go with you. And if you
Ooh.
woke up in the middle of a disaster, you could use your whistle to yell for help. I missed also shoes. Like your
Okay.
old running shoes should go in that bag too. Whenever you get a new pair, just put the old ones under your bed so that you can, if you're surrounded by broken glass or whatever, you can put on your shoes and go help the kids or help the animals or deal with whatever you're going to be dealing with in that moment.
You also, I think, had a mnemonic tool that for working with kids, so the kids can memorize important information like phone numbers and addresses. Because, and actually, I think it's good for grown-ups too, because we keep so much on our phones, we don't remember that information. That's not the way I grew up or Warren grew up, and I guess it's not the way you grew up. We grew up knowing all these numbers and addresses if we needed to get help. But we don't know that anymore. And you've been promoting that, people learning how to memorize this stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we created kind of an ebook called Memorize It, which is activities to help kids remember phone numbers and addresses. And, everybody learns in different ways. So some people learn visually, some people learn using their hands, some people learn auditorily. So we have activities in that book for every type of learner. And so if you go through those activities, which are fun, you could do them as adults. Absolutely. One of them's like get some Play-Doh and create the number, right? So the physical act of creating the number will help you to remember. If you do all of it, it will really help to drill that number into your brain. And yeah, my son's 9 and he knows my phone number. And that's the only he hasn't learned my husband's yet, but that's the next step, and now my daughter's 4 now, so I should use that on her maybe this weekend. There's always more preparedness to do is one of the unfortunate realities of preparing. And I can understand why people are interested in avoiding it all, but as more and more people are affected by this extreme weather, it is good for your mental health to just take the bull by the horns and take a couple steps, right? Get that go bag in order. You can buy a prepackaged go bag online, and I like to add to it some stuff for mental health, right?
Yes.
I always imagine that we're stuck on a high school gym, right? We're like sleeping on the high school gym because that's a very common kind of area where they will set up staging sites for people who've been affected by disasters. And I'm like, if I'm on that on a cot, if I even have a cot, right? If I'm lucky enough to have a cot, how am I going to get through this with my kids? We're going to be scared. We're going to be freaked out. How can we do things? And can I have extra in my go bag for the other families?
Sure.
That weren't able to prepare, So I have coloring books. I have some CBD gummies and some sleeping pills, and earplugs. And,
oh yeah, important.
Yeah, because it'll be hard to sleep, with all that stress.
Yeah, I remember when I went through community emergency response team training. And one of the fascinating things about it was the emphasis on personal comfort that they made. And I was not expecting that. I figured, okay, suck it up, buttercup. But the reality is, in a disaster situation, you're already sucking it up, buttercup. Yes. And you really need to have, socks and something to read and a portable radio with a hand crank so you can monitor news, but you can also get some entertainment. But I was really surprised at how much emphasis they put on personal comfort.
Yes. I also went through that training, and it was honestly quite sobering for me living in this earthquake prone area, like how learning during that training how few emergency responders there actually are for how big of an area I live in. Yeah. And we live very close to the Loma Prieta fault line, which is a fault line that's overdue for a big one. And, the reality is that in a big disaster, you cannot count on getting help quickly, and I'm sorry that that's bad news. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but, we really need to take personal responsibility for ourselves and our families, especially because so many people are barely making ends meet and have to work 3 jobs, and there's no way they could do preparedness. So I feel like if you have the space and the ability to prepare, it's really our civic duty to do so.
Absolutely. I was going to say, Warren, did you have a question?
No, I'm soaking this all in. I grew up on the Gulf Coast where we had a lot of hurricanes, and so there was a lot of evacuation and whatnot, and people had to prepare for those things as well, right? Nowadays they have the hand crank radios, right, that you don't need batteries or anything for, so you can use those in a situation like if you do have a radio where the batteries go, you can just crank it up, it's ready to go. What about like maybe having depending on your situation, right? If you live in Tornado Alley or maybe you live in an earthquake prone area, that sort of thing. Do you recommend using like having walkie-talkies, like modern walkie-talkies that can go long distances, or what kind of like technical stuff do you recommend for people to have that's practical, but that's very useful in those situations?
Yes. So I think, walkie-talkies are kind of in the advanced level of preparedness, right? Like that's where you've done some baseline preparedness and now you're like, okay, let's plan for even more emergency type situations. The number one communication plan that I recommend people have is an official out-of-town contact, and we call this person the master of disaster, and so this is a person who's a family friend or a family member who lives outside of the area, and they are pre-chosen, and everybody has memorized their phone number, and so that you can text them and they can relay information between your families, because often you can text out of the area easier than you can text inside the area. And so, and when you're texting, they might not go through right away. So it's recommended that you say what time you're texting, what your needs are and where you are, right? So like, are you hurt? Do you need shelter? This be very businesslike, right? It's 1:02 p.m. and I can't go home. I don't know where the kids are and, my husband, and we need somewhere to go tonight. And then that out-of-town contact can, go online, see what the emergency shelters are for the area, and hopefully kind of coordinate with the family to get everybody together. But, part of the planning is setting up designated meeting places ahead of time so that you're not on the go trying to figure out where to meet. A school or a religious institution is a really good one, especially if other people, other families that would be there. I'm really focused on families because I have kids, but it's relevant for adults too, right? If you're going to some place where you have community, you're immediately going to feel better, right? Because you're going to run into somebody, you're going to have that camaraderie of going through this together. So the rules of thumb is to have, obviously you have your meeting place at home, right? If you can go home, you want to go home. That's probably where your gear is and your extra food and water and stuff. Otherwise, have a place near home that's not your home, another place in town that's a little bit farther away, and then a place out of town. And, this is like commonly referred to as the bug out location, right? And that gets into, more off the grid living and stuff like that. But like our bug out location is my parents' house, right? It's 15 minutes away. If we really had to, we could walk. We wouldn't want to, but we could meet there if we have to.
What I've appreciated about what you do is a lot of people, I think, relegate in their mind disaster preparedness. If they don't live in an area that's earthquake prone, people have earthquake kits, or in a hurricane prone area where people have the hurricane kits. But if they don't live in that kind of an area, they tend to associate it with extreme right-wing, individualistic, survivalistic, very suspicious behavior, people who are very suspicious of their neighbors. And they don't really see that it really is about community resilience. I have a friend who survived the Civil War when she was living in Sarajevo. And that, you can imagine what that was like. And one of the things that she said to me, she said, if you survived, it was not because of your friends or your family. It was your neighbors who kept you alive, whether you liked them or not.
Right.
The neighbors kept each other's alive. And what I've appreciated about what you do is that it's about community resilience rather than going Rambo and only taking care of yourself. But this, if you're going to survive, you have to be neighborly.
And in my opinion, who wants to survive where it's just me and my family stuck in like an off the grid cabin, and like that doesn't sound like a future that I want, I would much rather have the whole neighborhood all together, putting all the food together and making it last and seeing what we can accomplish, because we're stronger together. And yeah, I was really turned off by all the really kind of macho right wing, like gotta hoard all the guns and the ammo and the food and all that. That's really not my speed. And I knew I wasn't alone, right? And that's actually how preppers have gotten such a bad name, right? Like everybody I talk to about this, they're like, oh, so you're a prepper now. And I'm like, well, actually, I don't really identify as a prepper. I just identify as a mom who wants to be prepared for what's coming, and it's not extreme, because like Warren, you mentioned the house fire. That is the number one most likely disaster to reach any of us, right? And so
that can happen anywhere. You don't have to be in a particular place. That could, that's what I think about too. Like it just, that could happen anywhere.
It could happen right now to any of us. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Especially on the 4th of July, right?
Yeah, some of those yahoos, fireworks. Look at this! Hey,
oh, you look at this!
Kaboom.
Oh my!
I mean, especially with the level of drought we have across the country, I'm like, maybe we could take a break from fireworks this year. I don't know, but
well, maybe that could be like house fires can happen anywhere, but if you have areas that are prone to be drought stricken, maybe those folks need to have a prepared kit too, in case of like wildfires or out of control fires, right?
Yeah, well, and this is what we're seeing. There's drought right now in places that don't normally have drought, right? In California, we don't have a drought right now. We usually do, right? So you have the tornado alley has been gradually creeping outside of its usual designation, right? And so unfortunately we've been living by these rules of like what's normal disaster wise, and those rules are not applying anymore, and we're going to see them. I mean, I wish this wasn't so, but we're going to see these disasters stretching across new boundaries over the next years, and people who've never experienced a wildfire are going to experience a wildfire. I mean, it's a scary time, to be honest.
I'm also thinking that you can have a situation where there are multiple things happening at once, that there may be, just because one thing is happening doesn't make that area immune to other things, that you might have a tornado and then you have flash floods. And that can happen. But I remember during COVID, for example, I was with CERT, and we were very active in the community during that first year of the pandemic. But then we had, for example, some heat emergencies. So, and part of what Chicago does is we have cooling centers. Now you've got people who are trying to protect people against the spread of infection, but we also had to keep them from dying from heat stroke. So we had to have new policies where they bring out the city buses, they're air conditioned, they park them, people can go in, but everybody had to have a mask, and volunteers were in there with masks and cold water to keep people cool. And then of course we had the George Floyd protests. And so we had some concerns about civic unrest, and things were being shut down. And so there were multiple things happening at the same time that made this tricky. But what you're pointing out here with climate change and these patterns changing, having multiple things at once may actually become more common, perhaps.
Unfortunately, I think so. I would love a different plan, a different future. Absolutely.
Well, let me ask you, I'm going to pull up your website here. This is herecomes theapocalypse.com. You've got the disaster playbook here as well. What made you decide to get, I mean, I know you're a mother and you care about your children, obviously, but what made you decide to create this and to get this organized the way this is?
Well, I really felt that we needed a fresh perspective on disaster
Mhm.
preparedness. I am a designer and I have a marketing and design company, artsygeek.com. And I have always kind of been sort of a serial entrepreneur on the side, right? Like, oh, I'm going to do this project or this project. I'm kind of an artist and my medium is business. And so when
Mhm.
I started doing these preparedness research and getting just this crazy advice, and I was just like, nobody wants this crazy advice. People just need a step-by-step guide. And I was like, oh, well, it should be an app. And then I'm like, but it needs to be printed, right? It
Mhm.
has to be printed because otherwise people are just going to download the app and not do anything, right? This is a book that will sit on your coffee table and stare you in the face until you deal with it, right?
Yeah.
And it also will be around, hopefully, and if you don't have access to your phone. And so you can kind of compile resources in it. And so, you know, I was just like, oh, well, this will be a fun project. And so I thought
Mhm.
it would be a fun project. And, you know, it hasn't been not fun, but I registered the domain name Here Comes Apocalypse in 2019, and I did not realize, then comes 2020 and we have a real apocalypse, right? Like COVID was an apocalypse in my mind. I should note here that I use the apocalypse pretty generally. It's about a world-changing event,
Right.
okay? And so a world-changing event is not necessarily zombies everywhere, right? It's losing your home. It could be losing a pet. There are many, many life-changing events that happen over the course of your life, and some of them are going to be extreme weather or a house fire or something like that, right? And so here comes the apocalypse is really here comes the life-changing event
Mhm.
that is increasingly likely for all of us.
Mhm.
And honestly, I think in 2019, I really thought that it was going to be, I thought I had 10 years before climate change got really bad. And watching, especially this year, well, I mean, every year since then has just been like, oh, wow, it's happening
Mhm.
so much faster. And, I talked to a lot of people and people are like, well, we'll technology our way out of this.
Mm.
And
Mm.
we have the technology to get out of this. We have had the technology to get out of this. But the powers that be don't want us out of this. They want us to keep, burning coal and fuel, which is causing, I don't know. I know that gets political, but science is
Mhm.
science.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's part of it, and I think more and more people are starting to become aware that uh it's a kind of a combination of both, right? The humans are doing this. They're accelerating things, but the earth itself has its own changes too. It's
Mhm.
like it's like saying, well, this house was already on fire. Me pouring a little more gas on there's
Mhm.
not going to be anything bad. It's like, well, yeah, of course, you're just going to make it burn more.
Yeah,
uh
right.
yeah, but I think the awareness is key though, right?
Yeah, and the oil and gas companies have lodged a 60-year campaign to bring about to confuse everybody with misinformation and disinformation. And I've done a lot of reading about how this whole thing happened. And in the 80s and 90s, it was pretty much agreed upon. People generally agreed that climate change was real, but we've been battered with all this disinformation, and it has created a lot
Mm.
of doubt in people's minds and made it all really hard to get actual action happening on a governmental level.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you first of all so much for joining us today. Can you tell our viewers where they can find your products and your content?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're at herecomestheapocalypse.com, and I've tried to buy every spelling of apocalypse
Mhm.
in case you misspell it. Um, And we're on Instagram at Hello Apocalypse, and we're on TikTok at the Disaster Playbook. We're on TikTok at the Disaster Playbook. And I mean, you can reach me at jen@herecomesapocalypse.com, and I'd love to hear from you. You know, we have a monthly happy hour online event where we kind of talk through what people are doing to prepare. So all are welcome there. And
Okay, great.
yeah, it's a good, we talk about a lot. You know, we just had one person who comes regularly. She had to evacuate from a wildfire. And so last month she shared what she learned, you know, which was really that she hadn't planned enough for her animals, you know.
Okay.
So right, and that's one of the steps in the Disaster Playbook is consider how to plan for your animals and for other special needs, right? We all have special needs. Some of us have more than others, but making sure that you really think through all of these permutations of what can go wrong and how you can prepare. And you know, we can't all do everything, and a lot of the gear can get expensive, right?
Sure.
But in the Disaster Playbook, we have very many steps that are completely free that will meaningfully increase your family's resilience, right? Things like setting up your out-of-town emergency contact, creating your designating your meeting places with your family. None of that costs any money, you know? And that will make a difference if you are suddenly faced with the unexpected, which obviously we hope never happens to any of us, you know?
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to hopefully talking to you again, and you or any member of your staff. More
yes,
than welcome. And as we say, don't wait for an invitation. If something comes up weather-wise and you would like to get the word out, let us know. We'll get you on the show.
Okay,
Yes,
sounds good. Right on.
Right.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, yeah. I'm particularly interested in that kind of stuff because I always, you know, like I said, grew up in Hurricane Alley, for lack of a better term, and it was, you know, you had to be prepared because I remember back in what was it, 1979. I was a little pup then, but Hurricane Frederick had come through. And it was one of the most devastating hurricanes for our area at the time, right? It came through because not only do you have the hurricane, the eye of the storm coming over, you also have the tornadoes that come with it too. Long story short, we were out of electricity for about 3 weeks. It's a pine belt too. So pine trees were all over the place, blocking roads. It was a mess. So, but fortunately, we were prepared before then. We didn't have to leave, fortunately, because we made all the necessary preparations there. But had we had like a house fire or something like that, you know, I don't know if we would have been prepared for that because that was kind of a rarity. But, you know, in places like where there's dry areas, you know, the LA fires, for example, we know people in this space who had to literally run for their lives away from those things. So yeah, preparedness is highly underrated, but it's very, very necessary for sure.
And becoming increasingly so.
Yeah. As the weather gets all super crazy, and not just like fires and stuff like that. You know, when you have these heat domes, like we had this past week. You know, make sure you're stocked up on water, electrolytes too. It's not just water, you know, because when you're sweating that stuff out like that, you're losing a lot of sodium. You need to replenish that kind of stuff. So there's that preparedness as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that. That was something else, but oof.
Yeah.
Not looking forward to it. A couple more months of summer here, and that can go into October sometimes.
Yeah, and we're just getting started with summer too. And don't forget the hurricanes. You know, our friends out in the Gulf there in the Atlantic, they'll be visiting the United States too. So let's get back to the news. We're going to get to the recurring tide. Maybe that'll cool us off a little bit. Probably not. So I'm talking about SNAP. It's like they're throwing us off. Danville residents left struggling to feed families after SNAP theft Yes. Several Danville, Virginia residents say their supplemental nutrition assistance program, SNAP benefits, were stolen overnight Wednesday, leaving families without money to buy groceries for the remainder of the month. Victims reported waking up to find their EBT cards, the electronic benefit transfer cards, empty just hours after their monthly benefits were deposited. Transaction records reviewed by 10 News, that's this outlet here, showed purchases made in locations including Philadelphia, Brooklyn, New York, and New Jersey. It's like they're just throwing us off like we're nothing, Danville resident Brianna Williams said. It's not right. It's not fair because it's no fault of ours. Williams said the stolen benefits represented one of her family's only source of food assistance. Someone took our only comfort of knowing we could feed our kids, she said. I know my baby's going to be able to eat tonight or have breakfast in the morning. Now parents and grandparents and people are just worrying day after day after day for this entire month. The thefts come as recipients have few options for recovering their lost benefits. An executive order that took effect in late 2024 ended a temporary program that allowed states to use federal funds to replace SNAP benefits stolen through card skimming, cloning, and other forms of electronic theft. As a result, Virginia does not currently have a state-funded program to reimburse recipients whose benefits are stolen. That means affected households generally must wait until their next monthly SNAP allotment unless they can find help from charitable organizations or other community resources. Ridiculous. Finding emergency food assistance over the Independence Day holiday weekend proved difficult. Multiple organizations contacted were either closed for the holiday or did not answer their phones. Virginia 211, which connects callers with food, housing, and utility assistance, said available emergency resources were limited and suggested reaching out to friends or family for help. We shouldn't have to be the ones suffering when we have nothing else in place to help us, Williams said. In a statement, the Danville Department of Social Services urged anyone who believes their SNAP benefits were stolen to report the incident immediately and request a replacement EBT card. Any SNAP recipient who believes their benefits were stolen should contact their local social services department immediately to report the incident and request a replacement EBT card, the department said. To help prevent future theft, all SNAP recipients are strongly encouraged to use the lock-unlock feature available through their EBT account. Locking an EBT card when it is not being used is one of the most effective ways to prevent unauthorized transactions and prevent benefits from ongoing scam activity. So residents needing food assistance after the holiday weekend may be able to access the following resources. There's House of Hope, serving free meals throughout the holiday weekend or into the week, I'm assuming, on a first-come, first-served basis. The Danville Department of Social Services, Virginia 211, God's Storehouse, which provides emergency food assistance during regular operating hours, and the Salvation Army of Danville. And for those who aren't familiar with skimming, it's basically it's a device that's put in a credit card slot or a debit card slot or any kind of card slot. So when you push the card in, the machine itself doesn't read it, or it does, maybe it does read it, but there's also that device that's in there that also reads all your information. And then you put your PIN number in, and then they've got your information. So this isn't just with EBT cards. This has happened with Metro cards in the past, where the people would put their credit or debit cards in there to pay for a Metro card in New York to ride the trains or whatever. And the same thing would happen. So you always want to make sure you look in there. I know it's kind of an inconvenience, but it's a safety thing to check that out and make sure that you're not getting the skimmer on there. It's
about as low as you can get. I mean, it's horrible in any case, but to steal somebody's food benefits.
Yeah. If you're on food benefits, chances are you're not a very wealthy person at all.
Yeah.
You're a poor person. So basically you're stealing from a poor person who's just trying to eat.
Who's just trying to eat.
Yeah, there's a special level of hell for these folks, for people like that.
And also using the tap, I think, again, using a tap, if you can, not sticking the card in there. It's hard to check. I mean, it's not, it's late at night. You could, use the flashlight on your phone to look around a bit, but and as they point out, if you can lock that card down, I keep all my cards locked down all the time, and I unlock them when I'm going to use them for just this kind of reason. But I mean, and the fact that there's really no way to replace this, it sounded like they know where this is happening. Law enforcement ought to be looking into this. Of course, they're not going to because it's poor people. But it's really distressing to hear this.
Yeah, unfortunately with the EBT cards, you can't do the tap, at least not yet.
Oh, not yet. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but hopefully, I would assume at some point they're going to put the chip on there that will allow you to do that. So in the meantime,
okay,
if you go someplace that that you've been going to regularly, you can kind of keep your guard down a little bit. But if you go somewhere different, just kind of make sure just in case, because it's not necessarily. I mean, yes, the onus is on the owners of the store that have to deal with that. But a lot of times, these people, these scammers are so smooth and slick that not even the grocery store owners would know it either. So just check for yourself just in case. It only takes like a couple extra seconds. So meanwhile, in West Virginia, 14,000 West Virginians have lost food assistance because of big, beautiful bill changes. What, Trump doesn't care about people? No, that can't be true, right? So on 10 days each month, Lily Hall reports to Del Barton Town Hall for an 8-hour workday, doing whatever town officials ask. On a given day, she organizes files, takes out the trash, or keeps the town's restrooms stocked with toilet paper and paper towels. Hall doesn't get paid money for her work. She's doing it to keep getting monthly benefit assistance from the federal food assistance program, SNAP. Often, it's food stamps. With some exceptions, recipients of SNAP have been required to do at least 80 hours per month of work, training, or volunteering. Under Republicans' One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the work requirements for SNAP were expanded beginning last fall. The law extended the upper age limit for work requirements from 54 to 64. It also removed exceptions for being homeless, a veteran, or a former foster care youth under age 25. The State Department of Human Services said late last year the expanded work requirements would affect 36,000 West Virginia residents. Proponents of work requirements tout the importance of work and self-sufficiency, but Del Barton, with a population of 422 as of 2020, has few job opportunities. Yeah, money doesn't grow on trees, basically. Hall has turned to volunteering for the city to meet the SNAP requirements. Her husband was a security guard for a coal company before he was diagnosed with cancer last year. They live with their daughter, 27. The family also receives help from a local food bank. I ain't got no problem with it, Hall said, of meeting the work requirements. Now, like I said, where it's going to be this heat wave that we're in now, I'm hoping I don't get shoved outside to do anything. If they say outside, I'm like, nope, I'm going to work. I'm going inside to work. I don't blame her. Cynthia Kirkhart, the executive director of Facing Hunger Food Bank, which supports a food pantry in Del Barton, said Hall is an example of SNAP recipients trying to do all the right things amid challenges. SNAP recipients have been doing all the right things, she said. I think there's a real value in our state, our legislators really focusing on what this state has available, what the very specific challenges are in our state, and us trying to fit into a cookie cutter version of other places. Because at a federal administration level, we're trying to meet those highly touted expectations of getting people back to work. You have to have jobs. You have to have transportation. You have to have child care, Kirkhart said. While Hall has kept her SNAP benefits, thousands of other people have lost theirs since Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill into law in July last year. As of March, West Virginia SNAP enrollment has decreased by more than 14,000 people, dropping from 270,722 in July last year to 256,385 in March of this year, according to data compiled by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Meanwhile, the state's unemployment rate averaged 4.2% in July last year, increased to 4.7% in February, and was 3.6% in May this year, according to Workforce West Virginia. The unemployment rate accounts for people who are without jobs and actively seeking employment. The West Virginia Department of Human Services did not respond to West Virginia Watch's question about the reasons for the decline in SNAP enrollment. Helen Comer of Yawkey in Lincoln County started SNAP benefits after she quit her job at a bank to care for her ailing parents. She described the caretaking experience as 2.5 years of no sleep. They were up all the time, she said. Dad was up all night. Mom was up all day. Dad had a catheter, so we were doing middle of the night hospital runs. Dad kept threatening to run away. When I did sleep, it was like cat naps and complete exhaustion. Comer's mother died in October 2024, and her dad died in April 2025. When SNAP reviewed her case in January, her benefits were decreased to $24 per month because she's under 65 and not working. Comer was still so exhausted she suspected she may have Lyme disease, but a test came back negative. She was eventually diagnosed with a blood clot, something she thinks she got from sitting with her dad. They said it was huge. So it was impacting my kidneys. So all this time I was sick and I didn't know it. And I thought it was exhaustion. I mean, no sleep for years. And it goes on here. But the point is that these work requirements, yes, if you're a healthier person and you're able to do a lot of these working requirements, it's kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, they're able to do it. But when you have people who have to quit, like these people who to take care of their parents or take care of loved ones like that, that's work too. But that doesn't get counted as work. You have to be out there contributing to capitalism and that for order to be working. And I think that's total bullshit.
And some of this work, as you point out here, is very hazardous. If you're doing that kind of caregiving, particularly with people who are disabled, you may be sitting a lot. You may be you're not getting sleep. You are you develop stress. You might injure yourself picking people up, and this is hazardous work. And by doing this herself, her parents are not going into a facility. They're not using government dollars for this. And this is the thanks that she gets, is having her benefits, taken down to $24. One thing I'm looking at, this woman in Virginia who is doing 80 hours of work a month, the maximum benefit for one person on SNAP, and that's not necessarily what you get, it's the maximum benefit, is $298. So if she's getting $298, she is making $3.72 an hour doing this state mandated work. So in fact, the state is getting somebody for less than minimum wage to do work. And I'm saying to myself, how convenient. Now, look, I'm all for job placement programs. And if it's something that can help somebody get back into the job market, where they're learning new skills, they have a resume, they're making the connections, I'm all for that sort of thing. But when it means that the state or a nonprofit or whatever employers participate in this are getting somebody for far less than minimum wage, I start getting very suspicious about that program.
Well, when the government starts painting broad strokes and treating everybody the same, as if though their circumstances are not different from one another, that's when it's like they're completely out of touch with the people that put them into office, right? And this is just, it's just very frustrating to see people having to scrape and survive like this when corporate welfare, they'll just throw money out at any old corporation that because they have the funds to do that,
and as much as
need more money.
Sure. And as much as I support SNAP, and I really do support it, it is a form of corporate welfare. It is subsidizing the food industry in this country. It's subsidizing retailers. In fact, it is under the auspices of the Department of Agriculture, not under Health and Human Services. It props up the food systems in this country, and it does so very efficiently because you don't have to build a separate supply chain for it. But this is a form of corporate welfare, and it does trickle down a bit to people. But now some of these people are being forced to go to work for less than minimum wage, just so that they can receive the paltry trickle of money that they're getting.
Yeah, and let's just differentiate the two different types of corporate welfare too, where this is like this is a benefit for people that is also a byproduct of that, helps corporations, but it also helps small businesses who sell groceries and stuff too. Whereas the actual real life corporate welfare, where they're just getting money hand over fist, practically no questions asked. It seems like there's two different standards between people and corporations in that regard. And it's like that needs to change big time.
Yeah, and keep in mind also Snap, they're also going after the smaller businesses too. Remember, we reported about a month or so ago regarding the fact that they have to offer different brands and different types of certain categories of foods. They have to expand that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how they have to micromanage that kind of thing, but at the same time, giant corporations like your Elon Musk, who's probably the biggest welfare queen on the planet, but he's a genius. He's a
very
genius.
Stable genius. He's
someone who was born rich and said, I'm going to buy people's brains and not have one my own. So meanwhile, conservatives are fighting against license renewals or there's a conservative fight against license renewals for ABC stations heating up. There's Jimmy Kimmel there. Okay, you can go away. A group of prominent conservative organizations have petitioned the FCC to deny license renewal requests from the 8 local television stations owned and operated by ABC, accusing the network of political, racial, and sexual bias in supporting the Chinese Communist Party. Exciting. The petitions come after the commission led by Trump appointee Brendan Carr, that guy, took the nearly unprecedented step of requiring the network, a frequent recipient of attacks from Trump, to apply several years early to maintain its ability to broadcast in markets around the country. While Carr has said the early license renewal process stems from an FCC investigation into ABC's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, the old DEI, petitioners are free to include a variety of grievances against the network and concerns about whether ABC is operating in the public interest. The petition's part of an open process that allows anyone to argue that ABC is not fit to hold publicly owned television licenses came from groups like the Center for American Rights, which has played a significant role during Carr's tenure atop the FCC agency as an initiator of complaints against major broadcast television networks. In a petition to deny filed last Monday, the group said the stations were not being operated in the public interest, in part because ABC's programs show a consistent and overt partisan bias, citing the group's past complaints about late-night host Jimmy Kimmel and the network's moderation of a 2024 presidential debate, among other concerns. ABC ignores long-standing commission precedents and principles protecting the integrity of the news, the group wrote. ABC engages in explicit racial and gender discrimination. ABC cozies up to the Communist Chinese Party and airbrushes over religious and ethnic cleansing. ABC fails to respect the commission's rules. The organization lobbied the FCC to deny ABC's renewal request and to call the matter for a hearing because the petition and accompanying materials raise sufficient questions about whether ABC is operating in the public interest or remains worthy of the public trust. The Media Research Center, a nonprofit conservative media watchdog group, filed a petition to deny the network's license renewal request, quote, because of ABC's continued and sustained abuse of the licenses subject to the current review. its notorious efforts to improperly influence national elections, and its willful engagement in misinformation and the promotion of violence. Have you heard of a network called Fox News? The group claimed that ABC owned and operated television stations in markets such as New York City and Los Angeles, have used public spectrum to suppress news coverage of the most critical stories of our day, to engage in electioneering and relentless political bias, to excuse minimum and even justify the epidemic of political violence, and to peddle misinformation and defamation. The Article 3 Project, a legal group started by the conservative Trump-aligned activist Mike Davis, focused its petition to deny on ABC parent company Disney's employment practices and efforts to hire a more diverse workforce. The commission should deny renewal of ABC's television licenses, wrote William Chamberlain, senior counsel for the organization. The record demonstrates consistent and serious violations of federal equal employment opportunity law. In the alternative, any renewal must include sweeping terms and conditions sufficient to eliminate all discriminatory practices and ensure future compliance. Another petition was filed by the Trump-affiliated conservative advocacy organization America First Legal, which was co-founded by the longtime Trump aide Stephen Miller. That snake. The group claimed that ABC stations demonstrated a lack of the character qualifications necessary to hold broadcast licenses. The FCC accelerated the timeline for ABC's license renewals in April after the White House called for Kimmel to be ousted over a joke he made about Melania Trump. So much for free speech, right? The FCC is also investigating whether the daytime talk show The View violated equal time provisions around political candidates appearing on programs after an appearance by the Texas Democratic Senate candidate James Tallarico, who is polling strongly against the Republican hopeful Ken Paxton. The agency has set a July 29th deadline for opposition to petitions to deny. After a final August 5th deadline for replies, the matter will probably be handed off to an administrative law judge to hold what is essentially a full trial over the license process, which would involve discovery and depositions and witnesses, or the FCC's commissioners could choose to hold hearings themselves. During a June 25th FCC meeting, Carr told The Guardian, this outlet here, that there was no clear timeline for the license renewal review and appeal process. If it's short, great. If it's long, great, he said, but we got to apply the Communication Act and the provisions. So what they're talking about, discrimination, they're saying white people discrimination. Is that
and
what
Christians, white people, Christians, that sort of thing. This whole thing with the Chinese Communist Party, I'm finding to be extremely amusing. I mean, talk about weird timelines. I mean, the fact that I'm in a timeline where I'm defending ABC.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I find it the hypocrisy palpable too.
Yeah,
because before all of this, it's fine to discriminate against everybody else, but then when it seems like there's some discrimination against white people or whatever, like, oh, now we have to worry about this. It's like we should have been worrying about this the whole time, but
yeah. But they're trying, there's been this effort to try and steer content. Again, with this whole thing with Jimmy Kimmel, late night comedian making a joke about the president's wife. I mean, the things that have been said about various presidents and their wives and their daughters and things like that over the years have been all over the place, and nobody batted an eyelash. And going back to when the head of the FCC was trying to tell radio stations what kind of music they should be playing.
Yeah.
That really set my teeth on edge, because that's really not supposed to be happening here. And again, they're going after the mouse here, ABC, because Disney owns ABC, but and the mouse can fight this, and they're looking at these affiliate stations, and that can be very devastating in some communities. But if they start, with having this big hammer that they go around, what happens to the independents? And a lot of these independents are serving smaller rural communities. They're absolutely essential. And what happens when they can't fight a battle like this?
Yeah, this is the litmus test. So what happens here could snowball into other networks and, like you said, other smaller outfits too could have to deal with this too. So we'll keep an eye on it, as we always do. Meanwhile, turns out U.S. support for Israel is slipping amongst the Democrats. I think that might be a Mamdani thing. Yeah, the Democrats growing more critical. So after decades of reliable bipartisan backing for Israel, a new AP NORC NORC poll reveals a dramatic erosion of support for the longtime U.S. ally, with rising opposition from Democrats and signs of division among Republicans. The survey by the AP NORC Center for Public Affairs Research arrives at a moment when a once consensus foreign policy issue is increasingly polarizing Americans along partisan and generational lines, driven by criticism for Israel's conduct nearly 3 years after the outbreak of its latest war with Hamas in Gaza, since October 7th, 2023. About 1/3 of U.S. adults, including roughly half of Democrats, believe that Israel has committed genocide against Palestinians during the war in Gaza, an accusation that's been leveled by some human rights organizations and vehemently denied by Israel and the U.S. government. Funny they would do that. About 2 in 10 Americans say Israel has not, and the rest, about half, don't know enough to say. A similar share, 30% of Jewish adults, say Israel has committed genocide, although about half, 49%, say it has not. So that the Jewish adults there are kind of split somewhat there. Harold Kalmus, who describes himself as as Jewish by birth, said he remembers being proud of Israel when he was younger, not anymore. I realize there is a threat from Hamas, and I realize there is a very difficult situation, but what they have done is just an unspeakable horror, he said, of Israel's military action against the Palestinians. They're trying to wipe out a civilization, as far as I'm concerned. The findings show sharply eroded views of Israel in the U.S. nearly 3 years after Hamas's attack on October 7th, 2023, which left 1,200 people dead in Israel, mainly civilians, while 251 hostages were taken back to Gaza. More than 73,000 Palestinians have died in Gaza. That's according to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry. Of course, there's many more under the rubble there, so that's probably thousands more, which doesn't distinguish between civilian and militant deaths, including more than 1,000 killed since the beginning of the latest ceasefire. The ceasefire. American sympathies had been shifting toward the Palestinians and away from the Israelis since around 2020, according to other polling, but has nosedived since the latest war in Gaza began. Many Americans, about 4 in 10, don't know enough to say whether Israel's immediate military response to Hamas's attack or its ongoing military operations were justified. Among those who did have an opinion in each case, most say the initial retaliation was justified, but a majority think its current actions are not. About 3/4 of Jewish adults said Israel's initial response was justified, but only about 4 in 10 believe that it's about its ongoing operations. Only about 1/3 of U.S. adults view Israel as an extremely or very important issue to them personally, but it's been a searing topic in American politics as the relationship between the two countries remains tense. Just 4 months before high-stakes midterm elections determine the balance of power in Congress for President Donald Trump's final 2 years in office. Vice President J.D. Vance recently criticized Israeli leaders who have expressed frustration with Trump, while vocal critics of Israel recently defeated establishment-backed Democrats in New York and Colorado primaries. So about 58% of Democrats now say the U.S. is too supportive of Israelis, up from 45% in January 2024 when Biden was president. That includes 51% of Jewish Democrats in the new poll. There's more numbers here. You can check that out in our Substack. But basically, I remember probably maybe like 10 years ago that all these politicians, they would of course they would support Israel no matter what. But since October 7th, 2023, and most of the world has seen the video that has come out of the atrocities that have been happening a lot of minds are starting to change when it comes to Israel. That yes, self-defense may not be good enough of an excuse to do the things that they're doing to these Palestinians.
Yeah. This is not surprising. And I'm seeing a lot of people on social media trying to fight back and saying, oh, we know what the real truth is. And so it goes. And so it goes. And it's disheartening to see this propaganda war, but I'm actually glad to see that people are resisting the narrative that's been going on for a very long time.
Well, yeah.
And,
Well, Well, I was just going to say they're getting the truth finally. Yeah. They're not being. They're starting to weed through the propaganda.
Yeah. When people see, for example, a man, attacking a nun in the streets, things like that. I mean, we're just seeing this horrific behavior, and on the part of Israelis, and it's causing people to question things. Now, again, I mean, most Israelis would never attack a nun or anybody else, but this is the kind of idea that the Israelis are saintly and the Palestinians are these terrorists. This is something that's been drilled into our heads. The media has really drilled that into our heads, and there's a lot of money behind that. And again, we're now social media, but also just people are talking more. There's a lot more voices. And I think that's on the whole a positive thing. One of the reasons why I'm very concerned about the FCC and these conservative outlets that are trying to restrict reporting, because again, if they win at that level, it could very easily happen to smaller outlets.
Yeah, you're more and more independent journalists' voices are becoming prevalent, and you're starting to see more and more people get away from the mainstream media who's been pushing this propaganda for years. Mm-hmm. And just a rule of thumb, I know our audience knows this, but for those newbies who might be watching, please like, share, and subscribe. But also remember that Republican pundits who are looking to make money on their YouTube channels are not journalists. Just remember that, and probably most of what they're saying to you is bullshit.
And I just put our link tree in there. If you could like us everywhere, we'd sure appreciate it. Yes,
please do. So now we move on. Got a little bit of news here in the Man of War Stings here. So from the That Was Quick files, Trump declares Iran truce over as IRGC responds to violent U.S. escalation. So Trump declared that the so-called truce between Tehran and Washington is over after the Islamic Republic responded to a violent wave of U.S. airstrikes that struck multiple areas in Iran overnight. Trump made the remarks while speaking to the press at a NATO summit in the Turkish capital, Ankara. When asked by reporters about the fate of the ceasefire and memorandum of understanding following the latest escalation, Trump said, "It's a very interesting question. To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people, and they are vicious, violent people," he added. And then he realized he was looking in a mirror, and he goes, "Oh, wait, I didn't mean us. I meant those people. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. I'll speak to our negotiators if they want to negotiate. They're good people, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, but they have to come back to me." Trumpy blubbered between cheeseburgers. Trump told the reporters it was a waste of time dealing with them, adding that there is something wrong with them and repeating that the truce is over. "They're liars. We make a deal. Everyone's agreed. No nuclear weapon. We make a deal. They go outside, talk to the press and say we never even talked about it." The ramblings of a madman. Meanwhile, air defense sirens blared across Bahrain for the third time on Wednesday morning following Tehran's response to the latest wave of U.S. airstrikes on Iran. The IRGC released a statement detailing its retaliatory strikes on U.S. military assets in Kuwait and Bahrain. The IRGC said it struck 85 U.S. targets in Bahrain and Kuwait with missiles and drones, calling the attack an initial response So in an initial response to this aggression, the naval and aerospace forces of the IRGC, through joint missile and drone operations, destroyed 85 major U.S. military installations in Port Salmon, the U.S. 5th Naval Base in Bahrain, and Kuwait's Ali Salam Air Base. It also said it shot down an enemy MQ-9 drone that attempted to interfere in the operation. Iran's foreign ministry slammed Washington's attacks and violations, including the U.S. Treasury's reimposition of energy sanctions that had been waived under the MOU. Israel's continued military attacks and terrorist acts against Lebanon have rendered important and fundamental parts of the agreement ineffective, the foreign ministry added. So a real ceasefire with Lebanon was part of the MOU. In fact, that was like part of, I think that was the number one item on there. So Tehran also reiterated its calls on all Gulf nations to stop allowing the U.S. military to use its bases and aerospace for attacks against the Islamic Republic. The responsibility for the dangerous consequences of this escalation rests with the treaty-breaking U.S. regime, the ministry statement read. And, of course, global oil prices jumped by 5% amid the escalation. The Brent North Sea crude benchmark surged by 5.3% to $78.09 a barrel. I'm pretty sure that's going to keep going up. Hours earlier, massive explosions were heard in multiple areas of Iran as a result of U.S. airstrikes. Successive rounds of U.S. airstrikes that targeted Iranian coastal positions in Bandar Abbas, Sirik, and Keshem Island. Footage of the violent strikes circulated on social media. CENTCOM said the strikes were a response to Iran's targeting of several tankers, which violated newly imposed regulations regarding the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM claimed over 80 targets were hit, including air defense sites. These were the heaviest U.S. strikes since the announcement of a ceasefire in April. As the U.S. attacks were underway, CNN correspondent Zachary Cohen, citing a U.S. official, said the U.S. attacks on Iran are punishment, not proportional, and won't be over for a bit. The new escalation by Washington coincided with the ongoing multi-city funeral held for late Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, who was assassinated in an illegal U.S.-Israeli strike at the start of the war. So game on again, as we can't seem to keep peace for any sort of thing. Apparently, the tankers that Iran was accused of striking apparently were violating part of the ceasefire agreement too, going through the strait without various permissions that had been agreed on before then. And of course, CENTCOM has been the Baghdad Bob of this as well too, to say, well, they started it. And it's like, well, they were defending what was part of the thing. Meanwhile, the United States is totally just taken the MOU and said, yeah, they probably weren't even about enforcing it in the first place.
It's a distraction. I mean, it's not a distraction for people who are living this, but at this point, I mean, it's every day I turn on the radio. I have no idea what to expect. Yeah, it's seesaw. And this has been, and then, Trump just trumpets his nonsense, which doesn't, at this point, I don't even know if it's really hurting anything. Well, I don't know that it's hurting anything. It's just because I don't think anybody's paying any attention. I'm beginning to wonder if anybody in any kind of authority is paying any kind of attention at this point.
Well, it's hurting a whole bunch of Iranians.
It's hurting a bunch of Iranians. And, frankly, all this spending and distraction is hurting Americans as well. This shouldn't be happening.
Well, Trump's been manipulating the markets with this war. So I'm not surprised by this. I didn't think this was going to last very long anyway. A lot of people who's been analyzing the situation too, that people over there analyzing the situation and know what's going on. They kind of expected this. It was a foregone conclusion that this was going to happen. The only thing that it really is in doubt is when all of this is going to end. And that remains to be seen as well. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to the Sudan story because basically the other story was it turns out that the school that was bombed in Iran initially at the beginning of the war, they were given, the U.S. military was given advice about updating their information about the area and was basically ignored it. And then it resulted in the bombing of a school. So in Sudan, now you're seeing calls for a ceasefire as over 300 children have been killed and wounded this year alone. So demands for a ceasefire in Sudan's 3-year civil war mounted this week amid reports that more than 300 children have been killed or injured in the northeastern Eastern African nation this year alone, mostly by drone strikes. The UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, said Modaisu, what is it? Did they mention anything? Okay. That children across Sudan continue to bear the brunt of a war that is becoming increasingly deadly, with at least 330 children reported killed or injured during the first 6 months of 2026. Darfur and Kordofan states continue to record the highest levels of child casualties. The situation in and around Al-Obaid and more broadly across North Kordofan is particularly alarming, UNICEF continued. Since May of this year, drone strikes and other attacks have reportedly resulted in more than 35 child casualties in the state, including at least 18 children killed and more than 17 injured. The affected children ranged in age from just 2 months to 17 years. According to the reports, drone attacks accounted for 60% of these casualties, highlighting the growing impact of this method of warfare on children and families. Let's skip down here. So Amnesty International USA said that both the Sudanese Armed Forces and Rapid Support Forces rebels have committed numerous human rights violations, including deliberate acts on civilians. Ethnic targeting has resulted in assaults on non-Arab communities, with women and girls subjected to sexual violence and exploitation. Children are not incidental victims. They are directly affected, facing forced recruitment, sexual violence, unlawful detention, torture, and a lack of medical care. On Monday, the UN Human Rights Council approved a measure proposed by 5 European countries, Germany, Ireland, Netherlands, Norway, and the United Kingdom, condemning escalating RSF-led violence in and around Al-Obaid. While both the SAF and RSF have committed documented human rights crimes, an independent UN panel released a report earlier this year detailing allegedly genocidal crimes committed by RSF rebels during last October's offensive in Darfur, where thousands of people were killed and others tortured, raped, and starved during the capture of al-Fashir. The UN experts found that genocidal intent is the only reasonable inference that can be drawn from RSF's actions. So you see this in Sudan, you see this in Iran, you see this in Gaza. It's always the innocent people who suffer in these conflicts like this. And but that doesn't seem to be a driving factor in stopping these conflicts.
Yeah.
Back in Vietnam, you heard tales of soldiers who would massacre villages, and some of those men who came back home who not only suffered PTSD, but they also suffered the guilt of what they had done. With a drone strike, it's almost like a video game.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
You have a camera, you have a camera on there that guides the thing, and you're not there. It's the drone that's doing all the work for you. So now there's more of this separation between what they're supposed to be really doing and their humanity. And, it just seems like more of these things are just going to keep happening.
It is a one-sided depersonalization because the perpetrator is at a distance. Of course, the individuals who are suffering the drone strikes, for them it becomes very personal because they are surrounded by people who they know, they care about, their family, their friends. They've watched them suffer. They watch limbs being blown off. They see households and families destroyed, buildings destroyed. And so it's very personal for them, but it's very depersonalized for the perpetrator. and talk about an inequality there of experience.
Yeah, it's and that's why we as the citizens need to stand up more and say, look, these wars, or what are these wars for? If it's for to protect your interests across the pond, that's no excuse for murdering children. I mean, I really shouldn't have to say that. That should be kind of obvious, but if you're a human being, but I think some people are just losing their humanity at the push of a button because of this. And it's, we're getting to a tipping point. How much of this are we really going to allow to happen? Because we're the people. We have the power to stop all this. We just need to find a way to get together and stop it.
And what's the blowback on this? Remember you were talking last week about the expression going postal. And that, many of the so-called incidents involving the postal workers were veterans who had PTSD because they got priority for hiring, and I have no problem with that. But that this was due to many of these folks that were dealing with untreated PTSD, and that this is how it was manifesting. So what's the blowback when 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, the person realizes, oh my God, this is what I did. Yeah. Even though you weren't there present, you weren't there physically attacking people, but you know exactly what you did. And it's no longer a video game. Yeah. What happens? And what are we going to read?
And no longer, I was just following orders. That's not gonna cut it either. So let's go to journalism here as we dip our toes into the press pool. Who counts? The count does 1, 2, 3. But also the Committee to Protect Journalists' Roles, documenting members of the press killed in the Israel-Gaza war, has made it a target. Yes, indeed. Biggest number of journalists that have been killed around the world have been, the majority of them have been killed there. At 12:37 p.m. Eastern Time on June 25th, Jody Ginsburg, the chief executive of the Committee to Protect Journalists, announced that the organization was re-examining the names in its database of journalists killed in the Israel-Gaza war. CPJ condemns in no uncertain terms the misrepresentation of combatants as journalists or media workers, or the misuse of press insignia. Such actions endanger every single individual journalist legitimately trying to report, she said in a statement. We are conducting a full review of the names on our list to confirm that no one who was actively engaged in combat is listed in our data. Ginsburg also pointed out that in-person verification by researchers from outside Gaza has been impossible because, as Gary Shee wrote for CJR's recent Access issue, since the war began, Israel has barred international correspondents and press advocates from reporting independently in the territory. Gee, I wonder why. 4 hours later, at 4:47 p.m., Jacob Weisberg, the chair of CPJ's board of directors and a co-founder of Pushkin Industries, emailed the board with an update on a parallel but distinct plan to reconsider who counts as members of the press. He wrote, according to emails I have reviewed, that this outlet has reviewed, that he'd established a special task force to re-examine the question of who is a journalist. He told board members this inquiry is not limited to Gaza and will address questions about our protection of journalists affiliated with the non-military wings of identified terrorist organizations, as well as journalists engaged in official propaganda or disinformation. He said that 9 people had already agreed to work on the task force and that they would share their recommendation with the board at the next scheduled meeting in October. The pair of announcements, one public and the other intended to be private, quickly set off a widespread debate about whether one of the world's most influential press advocacy groups was caving to political pressure. Since the Israel-Gaza war began in October 2023, CPJ, a nonprofit headquartered in New York that promotes global press freedom, provides safety support to reporters and produces research about attacks on the press, has kept a well-sourced and widely cited count of journalists killed. CPJ says the database records people's names only after its researchers based around the world have confirmed via At least 2 independent sources of information, desk-based research, and in-person research where possible, that each person is a journalist who has been killed in relation to their work. Supporting evidence can include information from family, colleagues, media reports, civil society, and government, or independent investigations, according to CPJ's methodology. The tally at present documents 263 journalists and media workers killed in Gaza, Iran, Lebanon, and Yemen, the vast majority of them by Israeli military, which routinely targets journalists and accuses them without evidence of being terrorists. CPJ's research puts Israel's war on Gaza down as the deadliest conflict for journalists on record. This has made the CPJ database and the methodology behind it a target for attacks by those seeking to discredit critics of the Benjamin Netanyahu administration. This goes on for several paragraphs. But yeah, I did a story on this not too long ago on my show, Morning Extra, and we were talking about this, how the CPJ was getting criticized for saying that we have to be more stringent in who journalists are. And it's like, just because you don't work for a major network doesn't mean you're not a journalist. Just because you're reporting information that's uncomfortable to other people and other factions in other countries doesn't mean you're not a journalist, right? Yeah. A lot of these people in Gaza that were killed, these journalists, were Palestinian, right? And so Israel used that as an excuse, like, oh, these terrorists are trying to perpetrate all this propaganda on us, when all they were really doing was pointing the camera and talking to people there. So it's really, I mean, that's journalism. The who, what, where, when, and why, if you capture it all on video, or even if you're just getting it from people, just writing it down from people, getting their takes on it, or what their information is. And, it just seems like it's trying to muddy the waters and trying to not necessarily protect Israel, but it just seems unnecessary in that respect, that you can't tell the difference between propaganda and real information, especially when you're seeing it with your own eyes. Yes, I know AI can muddy the waters, but these people don't have these technologies in these places where their buildings are all blown up.
Yeah. I think journalism is supposed to make people uncomfortable. This is a very imperfect world that we live in. There's a lot of great stuff about it, but there's a lot of bad stuff. And journalism, particularly modern journalism, has really focused on looking at that bad stuff, shining a light on it, and say, hey, this is happening. People are getting hurt. It's hurting society. Let's expose this, and so people can take action about it. And yes, it may make a person feel uncomfortable, but that's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and if it is making you uncomfortable, then chances are you probably need to reevaluate what you're doing. If the truth is slapping you back in the face like that.
Just a thought. Yeah,
but you have any kind of moral fiber, that is.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, publishers are suing OpenAI and Microsoft over alleged copyright infringement. What is this about? So a group of publishers has filed a fresh copyright infringement lawsuit against OpenAI and Microsoft in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, alleging the companies unlawfully copied and used copyrighted news content to train generative AI models while stripping away copyright management information, or CMIs, from the original works. The lawsuit, Rickner Communications Incorporated et al. Versus Microsoft Corporation et al. Accuses OpenAI of reproducing and distributing copyrighted works without authorization, and claims multiple OpenAI entities, along with Microsoft, are vicariously liable for the alleged infringement. Beyond copyright infringement, the complaint also invokes the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or the DCMA. Yes, we on YouTube know about the DCMA pretty well. Alleging OpenAI intentionally removes copyright management information from publishers' works while building databases used to train GPT models. According to the complaint, the publishers embedded various forms of copyright management information in their content, including copyright notices, author names, publisher names, titles, identifying information and terms of use. The plaintiffs allege OpenAI copied these works without permission and removed such information when scraping publisher websites and incorporating content from third-party datasets into AI training corpora. Ooh, look at that fancy word.
Fancy.
Yeah, no, right? Just like your tin fish and your
Weird nuts.
Your weird nuts there. The complaint further alleges that GPT-generated outputs fail to preserve copyright notices, titles, and other identifying information, even when the outputs allegedly reproduce portions of the publisher's works verbatim or in derivative form. The publishers argue this constitutes a violation of Section 1202 of the DCMA, which prohibits the intentional removal or altercation of copyright management information when it facilitates copyright infringement. The lawsuit contends that OpenAI knowingly removed CMI to conceal the use of copyrighted material in its AI models and to enable both the company's alleged infringement and that of end users. The publishers claim they have suffered damages as a result and are seeking statutory damages, actual damages, restitution of profits, and attorney's fees. In its prayer for relief, the publishers are also seeking a permanent injunction preventing further alleged infringement, and notably an order under the Copyright Act requiring OpenAI to remove all copies of the registered copyrighted works from GPT models, other large language models, and associated training data sets. The complaint additionally seeks compensatory damages, disgorgement of profits, litigation costs, and any further relief the court considers appropriate. Publishers have also demanded a jury trial. Ooh. The case adds a growing list of copyright lawsuits against AI developers over the use of copyrighted material for training large language models. The central issue across these cases is whether the use of protected words for AI training constitutes fair use under U.S. copyright law or requires licensing from rights holders. Courts have yet to establish a definitive precedent on several of these questions, making the outcome of such litigation potentially significant for both the publishing and AI industries. So kind of knew this was coming. With new technology like this comes new legal shenanigans.
Indeed. And a lot of these are the lawsuits are from smaller newspapers, smaller regional areas that are really, these newspapers are fighting for their lives. And so, they just like this utter disregard for their copyright, scraping of this information for the training, and then eventually it gets repackaged by the model so that people aren't even being sent necessarily back to the original source. And one thing we do try to do here, I know, we oftentimes rely on other people's journalism, we usually do, but we always cite it, and we always provide links in our show notes and say, hey, this is the source, you need to check this out for yourself.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point of what I do on my shows too. I'm kind of just like the messenger. They're relaying that information. Oftentimes there's time constraints, and I can't tell people everything that's in an article like we do here. Sometimes we will just refer them to our Substack, so you can click on those links yourself. You can read the article yourself, and you can read who that article is from. So we're more than happy to provide that information. But what these the AI companies are doing, it's wow, AI company doing something shady. Well, you don't really
imagine that.
So now we're getting to the clownfish school, and you got a special little thing for us, right?
Special little thing, only because normally we have a normal format for this, but this is it's slightly a little bit more complicated, but people need to know about this. So what has happened is the IRS has programs that can help taxpayers resolve any kind of conflicts that they have. And one of these conflicts is that they have these taxpayer assistance centers. These are actual offices based in communities where people can go in person to speak to a representative from the IRS to get matters worked out. Sometimes they do it because they've been a victim of identity theft. They have to reestablish their identity. They may have questions that they just can't get resolved over the phone. They maybe prefer to do things in person in an age of identity theft. Some people are very uncomfortable discussing these matters on the phone. There are a lot of scammers who, under the guise of being IRS agents, will try and manipulate people. They will give them false numbers to call. So people prefer to deal with these things in person. And what has happened is that there's been some issues that have cropped up with what is going on at these taxpayer assistance centers. And the Office of the Inspector General decided to do an investigation. And you will check in our show notes, which you can find in our description, also just on our Substack. And in fact, I'm going to put a link into the comments right now. You can actually check out the report. And I have to give the Inspector General some credit here. Whoever wrote this report did a really good job. It is super easy to read. It's 26 pages. They explain the methodology, but at the beginning, they give a really good summary of what was going on. So there are several factors involved here. What they found, for example, is that when they started going into these offices, they were making unannounced site visits to these offices during the regular hours, what they call extended hours, when people can just walk in if they don't have an appointment, and Saturday events. And again, they were doing these Saturday all-day events where people could, on a walk-in basis, go in and get help. And what happened is, in 30 of the 91 visits, about 1/3, the visitors, the investigators did not get help, or got incomplete or inaccurate responses, couldn't even get into the office because they were blocked by security, or found the offices were unexpectedly closed. This is not good. In 17 of 19 brief front desk interactions, again, they were getting, people who were coming in were getting incomplete or inaccurate information. Employees were telling visitors to make appointments instead of just being able to check for same day slots, which people are supposed to be able to do. They're supposed to be able to check on that for people. And in fact, their scheduling data did also show that there was time available during the day for a walk-in, but that the front desk staff wasn't checking their own records. So this is disheartening, because again, they offer these walk-in hours only to, and you have people who are acting in good faith. If a person is going to the office in person, this is a person who really wants to get these matters resolved. They're not just doing things online, and there's a lot of options on the irs.gov website for that. They're not going on the phone. They're not doing things online. They really want to get this resolved, and the person maybe is taking time off work. They've traveled to this office. They've arranged for childcare. They've got a stack of folders, only to be told, hey, we're closed, or we can't accommodate you. And in many cases, what they did find is that there was time available, but the staff couldn't be bothered to check on that. The other thing, what they found out is that in about 46% of the cases where somebody was able to get assistance, they were given inaccurate information. And they're supposed to be, the staff are supposed to use this thing called the Interactive Tax Law Assistant, and it's a tool. It's an online tool that they can use to walk through questions and get answers. But the people weren't using that tool. The workers were not doing that. And also, in 19 of 22 visits where the IRS worker was supposed to give the person a survey card to say whether their problem was resolved, in 19 of the 22 visits, they didn't get that card. The person seeking help was not getting help. So they weren't even following their own protocols. And I want to make, so this is not great. what they found is that 96% of no-show appointments, when people had an appointment and did not show up, were not closed within 15 minutes. And what's the system supposed to close that no-show and then make it available to somebody, either who wants to call in and make the appointment or who is there on a walk-in basis. They weren't doing that. Their own staff is not doing that. They were left open all day, or they were closed much later. So that is a serious problem. And again, it's hard on people who are already making a stressful journey, because nobody wants to deal with the IRS. And they're not being and now they have to come again another day. So this is something that's very easily remedied. And I should say the individuals who are in charge of the Office of Taxpayer Assistance did admit that, that this needs to be corrected. So what has happened is the Inspector General has outlined some areas that need to be addressed. The Office of Taxpayer Assistance has come back and said, we're going to make those changes. We hope that they do. But there are some things that we need to keep in mind as we kind of hopefully some of this will be addressed. We need to keep something in mind. If the IRS gives bad advice to somebody, and they make a mistake in how they're handling their taxes, the taxpayer bears the burden of that bad advice. Even if you can prove that they got bad advice, doesn't matter. They're still going to have to deal with the penalties and all those headaches. So that's a real problem for people. And if you'll notice, I did some research, and I actually went back and found a story from 1999 where the similar thing was happening with a phone line. And it was found that about 15% of the time when people were calling in for their helpline, people were getting bad advice. So this is a problem that the IRS is fully aware of. And the IRS really does encourage people to resolve their own tax problems. I mean, there are lawyers and CPAs, but those are very expensive. And there are these services that will claim to help you with IRS tax problems, but oftentimes they're doing exactly what a taxpayer could do for themselves, but they're charging extortionate rates for their services. And also there has been a decrease in the number of people who are getting help through these services, because apparently through the taxpayer offices, in part because in some cases they are simply not staffed. They don't have the staffing for us. And they're supposed to have all these events. They're announcing the events. But in some cases, the announcements are not going through because now if the IRS, the Department of the Treasury has an announcement to make, it has to go through a new set of regulations. Somebody else has to check it first. So announcement about the clinics and the services don't get out. So even if they are available, even if somebody is in the office, people may not be aware of it because they're not getting the information out to the public. Now, this is all very inconvenient. It's not good for taxpayers, but it kind of goes back to what I've been talking about with the regulatory state. If these offices, if these agencies are continuously being interfered with, where they are understaffed, when they do something and nobody shows up because they can't get the word out, of course, that's going to decrease support for these expanded hours or these all-day tax clinics that they might be having. Is this intentional as a way to demoralize the workers and to further hobble the regulatory state? Or is this just general incompetence? Either way, us citizens, us residents of the U.S., are the ones who are going to suffer for it.
Well, yeah, that's why when it comes to that kind of stuff, don't rely on one source. I mean, maybe if you have a tax preparation service, you may want to discuss that with them as well.
Yeah.
Because you might get bad advice. Yeah, from people. I mean, you may get it from people who just don't really care and just going through the motions in a government job. You know, it happens. Yeah.
Well, there are the tax services, and again, there are CPAs and there are lawyers. I can tell you, a tax attorney I know bills at $800 an hour, which is for mere mortals, not likely to happen. CPAs charge quite a bit. The tax preparation services can be helpful. What you want to look for is the phrase IRS enrolled agent. that means that whoever you're dealing with, whether they're a lawyer, a CPA, a tax preparer, they are able to approach the IRS on your behalf. Also, if you're living overseas, that becomes really important to find out whether the person who's helping you with your U.S. taxes is actually an IRS enrolled agent. But more seriously, if people who are going directly to the IRS and you want to go to irs.gov, don't go anywhere else, but if they're getting bad advice from the IRS's own employees, and then they're being held responsible for that, that is a problem. And that it's a real problem. The Inspector General is noticing this, and that's kind of the federal watchdog. But we're left with some serious questions. Why is this being allowed to happen? And why is it continuously being allowed to happen? Is this just because of incompetence, or is there something else at play?
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to get to finally today. And, Mel Brooks is doing a sequel to Spaceballs, right? I think it's
he turned 100, didn't he?
I think so.
I think he's turned 100. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it Spaceballs 2, The Search for Cash or something like that is the name of it. Well, apparently in Australia, there's a real life Spaceballs going on there, as mystery spheres on Australian beach identified as Spaceballs. What's that coming out of his nose? Spaceballs. Oh shit, there goes the planet. So there's the one of the Spaceballs right there. Looks pretty interesting. Look, you know what that reminds me of? I don't know if you partake in this stuff. They used to have, like, I don't know, it was the 90s or whatever, but they had these kegs that were round balls, and they had the beer in there and stuff. This kind of looks like one of those things. I can't remember who did that.
Oh, yes. You jogged my memory. I don't remember who did it, but it was a thing for a little bit.
Maybe those were Spaceballs too.
Yeah.
So mysterious metal spheres found on a beach in Queensland, Australia, were likely pressure vessels from a space launch, also known as Spaceballs. The Australian Space Agency said the spheres caused concern during the weekend when they were spotted in the sand and forest beach near Ingham. The objects were initially unidentified, but were considered potentially hazardous by the Queensland Fire Department, which cordoned off an exclusion zone around the area and had the spheres examined by firefighters in hazmat gear. An Australian Space Agency spokesperson said Monday that the objects had been recovered and identified. The recovered objects appear to be pressure vessels from a space launch vehicle, the spokesperson told the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. The agency has identified the likely source. Object's location and characteristics are consistent with debris from a foreign rocket body that recently re-entered the atmosphere from orbit, to which a small guy named Yogurt said, "I see your Schwartz is as big as mine." So all hail Mel Brooks.
And Pizza the Hut.
Baseball. And Pizza the Hut. No John Candy, unfortunately, for this one. Obviously, he's passed away. He's up with the Spaceballs in the sky. And I'm kind of curious about that movie myself. I was like, at least he says it's The Search for Cash. A little self-deprecating humor there. It's like, yeah, but I think this is more of a, this is probably something that Mel Brooks wanted to do a long time ago. And now he's probably like, look, I need to go ahead and do it, before I, join the Spaceballs myself. So do you care about a new Spaceballs movie? Does that pique your interest?
No.
I'm very torn because it's like this far after the fact, it seems like, it is kind of desperate, I'm sure there'll be some humor to it, but you can't match what happened with the original. I mean, with that cast and just,
and that time.
And that time too, exactly. It was really a part of that 80s, vibe, and to try and resuscitate it today, it could be good. It may be not, though. It just seems like a risky gamble. I don't know. I'm going to let other people watch it, people I trust movie wise, and they can tell me if it's decent enough to go watch or not. So I got burned on Highlander 2. I'm never doing that again. I drove 2 hours to see Highlander 2. I loved Highlander, the first one. It was one of my favorite movies of all time. But Highlander 2 is the worst movie I've ever seen, probably. It's just so bad. And I was like, I drove 2 hours for this. So I learned my lesson about sequels, to be very, very cautious about those things. So
All right.
yeah. So no Spaceballs 2 for me, at least not right now. So programming note, later this evening, about 8:00 Eastern, I'm gonna have Alex Suarez, who was on our show a few weeks back, now in the aftermath of the Venezuelan earthquakes down there. He's going to talk about that. He's also going to talk about his new book about his father that he wrote. So that's going to be 8:00 Eastern, 5:00 Pacific time on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook, on the Extra Bulla network, if you will. Looking forward to that. And then, of course, Morning Extra Friday morning for all the news and sillies and science and all that good stuff. Friday night for The Secret Show. And I think I've plugged everything there that needs to be plugged. Do you have anything coming up or any final thoughts? What's going on?
Well, it was a great show. It was great to have Jennifer Heller on the show. I do urge everybody to check out her site. A lot of really practical information. Her social media as well. A lot of free content that's good for. It's news you can use. It's information that you can use, you and your family, and do share it with your friends. It's really important, this sort of thing. People are going to take it a lot more seriously if they're hearing from their friends about this sort of thing. So absolutely. And also a reminder to everybody, if you can, like, share, and subscribe to The Undercurrent. If you can particularly hit up our channel on YouTube. If you're watching on some other channel, if you could just go right in there and hit that subscribe button. It would really help us a lot as we are growing this channel and being able to get the news to you.
Yeah, and I believe, yes, you can. Our Substack is down below, and the link to our YouTube channel there is in the description for all the formats that we're on today. Other than that, I'm going to say we're getting out of here. Stay cool. Here comes the heat again, coming next week. So speaking of prepared, be prepared. Drink a lot of fluids. Get your electrolytes, and wear a hat if you can do that, or whatever keeps you cool. And you have to be outside. Please do so. All right. Well, that's it. Take care, everybody. We'll be back again with this show next week at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time. YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and of course all our information on our Substack. Be sure to check that out. We'll see you next week. Peace.
All right. Peace.